My son has been calling me every night at 9:15 in the evening for exactly 3 months. He always asks me the same thing. Mom, are you alone? If I answer yes, he just hangs up. If I tell him no, he insists on knowing who is with me. Last night, I broke the pattern and decided to lie, telling him I was alone. I never imagined that a simple lie would be what saved me from losing everything. But before I continue, check if you're already subscribed to the channel and write in the comments, where are you watching this video from? We love to know how far our stories are reaching. My name is Sarah Randall. I'm 58 years old, and until 3 months ago, I thought I knew my only son, Ethan, well. He was always reserved, but never distant. Our relationship changed when my husband, David, passed away 4 years ago. The grief brought us together at first, but slowly, Ethan started to pull away. At 32 years old, he became excessively protective, almost obsessive, about my finances, my routine, and especially who I spent time with. It all started on a random Thursday in March. I was watching a documentary about whales when my cell phone rang. Ethan was flashing on the screen. "Mom, are you alone?" was the first thing he asked. The question seemed strange, but I answered naturally, "Yes, honey." "Why?" He hung up without saying another word. I stared at the phone, confused. I called him back, but it went straight to voicemail. I sent him a text asking if everything was okay, if something had happened, but I got no response. The next night, at exactly 9:15 at night, Ethan called again. "Mom, are you alone?" "Yes, Ethan. What's going on? You're scaring me." Again, he hung up. On the third day, I decided not to be alone. I invited my neighbor, Brenda, over for coffee. When Ethan called, I told him, "No, Brenda is here with me. Hubo un breve silencio." Then he asked, in a voice I didn't recognize, "Just Brenda? Is there anyone else there?" "Yes, just her." "What is going on, Ethan?" "Nothing, Mom, just checking." "Are you two okay? Are the doors locked tight?" "Yes, honey, everything is fine." "All right. Good night then." And so the pattern began. Every night at 9:15 at night, Ethan would call, always asking the same question. If I said I was alone, he'd hang up. If I said I had company, he wanted to know exactly who was with me. I tried to question him, to understand the reason for this behavior, but he always dodged the conversation, saying only that he was worried about me. I mentioned it to Brenda, who suggested Ethan might be dealing with some psychological issue, perhaps obsessive-compulsive disorder. I suggested he seek help, but he denied any problem. The weeks passed, and the calls continued, right on time. I tried to trace where they were coming from, but Ethan used a private number. When we saw each other in person, he acted naturally, as if those nightly calls didn't exist. If I tried to bring it up, he'd change the subject or say it was just a son's concern. It was during this period that I noticed something even stranger. Small things in my house seemed out of place. A drawer I was sure I had closed was slightly open. The portrait of David on the nightstand was turned at a different angle. The back door, which I rarely use, had the lock slightly scratched. Was it my paranoia? Were Ethan's calls getting to me that much? In mid-May, Ethan came to visit on a Sunday afternoon. He brought cheesecake, my favorite dessert, and suggested we review some financial matters. He was always good with numbers, having gotten his accounting degree, so I accepted his help. That's when he mentioned, seemingly offhand, that maybe it would be better if I sold the house. "It's too big for you alone, Mom. We could find a smaller, safer apartment near my place in Chicago." "But I love this house, Ethan. Your father and I built our lives here. I have my garden, my neighbors. We need to think about your future, your safety." He glanced at some papers. "In fact, I've already looked at some places in Lincoln Park I think you'll like." That made me deeply uncomfortable. Ethan had never been pushy, but here he was, practically deciding where I should live. I thanked him for his concern but said I had no intention of moving. The look he gave me, a mix of frustration and something I couldn't identify, sent a chill down my spine. He quickly regained his composure, smiled, and said he just wanted what was best for me. But, in that moment, I felt like I was looking at a stranger. In June, I decided to install discrete security cameras in strategic points around the house. I didn't tell anyone, not even Brenda. I needed to understand what was happening. The calls continued, and I alternated between saying I was alone or with company, just to observe Ethan's reactions. In the first week of July, something changed. Reviewing the camera footage, I saw something that chilled me to the bone. At 1:20 in the morning, a hooded figure entered through the back door using a key. They moved with familiarity through the dark rooms, went to my study, and checked some drawers. From the build, I recognized him immediately. It was Ethan. My own son was breaking into my house in the middle of the night. I checked the recordings from previous days and discovered it wasn't the first time. He had entered at least 3 times that week. He always checked if I was sleeping, looked for documents in the study, and sometimes just sat in the living room, in the dark, for a few minutes before leaving. What was he looking for? What did these calls mean? Why this obsessive behavior about me being alone? Last night, I decided to break the pattern. When Ethan called promptly at 9:15 at night and asked if I was alone, I lied. Yes, I'm alone, but I wasn't. Claire, my lawyer and longtime friend, was sitting right next to me. After seeing the recordings, I had panicked and called her for help. She was as disturbed as I was by what she saw. Ethan hung up, as usual when I said I was alone. Claire and I looked at each other, not fully understanding what it meant. But we agreed something was very wrong. We decided to wait and see if he would come again that night. At 10:40 at night, we heard the sound of the back door opening. Claire and I hid in my bedroom closet, leaving just a crack to watch. I was trembling, a mixture of fear and outrage growing inside me. My own son, my only family, breaking into my house like a thief. For what? Ethan moved silently down the hall, passing the bedroom without entering. I heard him shuffling papers in the study, opening and closing drawers. After a few minutes, he returned and stopped in front of my bedroom door. My heart was pounding so hard I was afraid he could hear it. He pushed the door open slowly and scanned the room. The streetlight coming through the window partially illuminated his face. There was none of the familiar affection I knew. His eyes were cold, calculating. He approached my bed, saw it was empty, and quickly left the room. "Mom?" he called softly down the hallway. "Are you home?" We remained motionless in the closet. I heard his hurried footsteps checking the other rooms, then the sound of the back door closing. When we were sure he was gone, we came out of our hiding place. "We need to call the police," Claire said, grabbing her cell phone. "Wait." I stopped her. "He's my son. I need to understand what's happening first. Sarah, he's breaking into your house in the middle of the night. This isn't normal. I know. Tears started to roll down my face. But there must be an explanation. Maybe he's in some kind of trouble. Maybe he needs help." Claire looked at me with compassion, but also with firmness. "Or maybe you're in danger. Have you considered that? These calls, these night visits, the insistence that you sell the house? Sarah, something is very wrong. I agreed to report it, but I asked for one day to confront Ethan first." Claire hesitated, but finally agreed, on the condition that I wouldn't be alone. She would sleep at my house that night, and the next day we would go together to talk to Ethan at his office, a public place where I would feel safer. I couldn't sleep. I spent the night mentally replaying the last few months, trying to identify when Ethan started to change. Was it after David's death? No. Ethan grieved, of course, but he handled the loss in a healthy way. Was it after his marriage to Jessica ended just over a year ago? He was affected, yes, but he didn't show obsessive behavior. What had happened to my son? In the morning, I called the accounting firm where Ethan worked. The secretary, who knew me, seemed surprised. "Mrs. Randall, Ethan hasn't worked here for almost 4 months. He resigned in March." I felt as if the floor had disappeared from under me. 4 months? Exactly when the nightly calls began. Ethan told me almost every week how busy he was at work. He mentioned clients, talked about projects. "Do you know why he left?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Not exactly. There were some problems. It might be better for you to talk to Michael, the director." I thanked her and hung up. I looked at Claire, who had heard everything. "We need to go to his apartment," I said. "Sarah, if he's not at work, He'll probably be there. It's dangerous. Then it's better if we go when he's not there. He always goes to the gym on Wednesday mornings. Today is Wednesday. Claire didn't seem convinced, but she agreed to come with me. On the way to Ethan's apartment, I called Michael, the director of the accounting firm. He knew me from the holiday parties and sounded concerned when he heard my voice. "Sarah, I'm very sorry about what happened. Ethan was always one of our top professionals. But what, Michael? What happened?" There was a silence on the other end. There were some discrepancies in the accounts he managed. Embezzled money. We confronted Ethan, and he confessed. It was substantial. The clients involved agreed not to press charges if he returned the money and resigned. Out of respect for you and David's memory, we decided to keep the matter quiet. I mechanically thanked Michael and hung up. My son had embezzled money from clients. My son, who grew up hearing David talk about honesty and integrity, who cried at his father's funeral saying he wanted to honor his memory. "How much do you think he took?" Claire asked as we parked near Ethan's apartment. "The amount doesn't matter. What worries me is why he did it, and what it has to do with him breaking into my house. We used the spare key I had, one Ethan gave me years ago, ironically, for emergencies. The apartment was surprisingly clean and organized, different from what I'd expect from someone going through a crisis. On his desk, we found some overdue bills and debt notices. Apparently, despite the embezzled money, Ethan was in financial trouble. In the bedroom, Claire found something even more disturbing. A folder with all my documents. The deed to the house, bank statements, insurance policies, including the life insurance policy David left in my name. A considerable amount. "Sarah," Claire said, holding a document, "did you sign a power of attorney, giving Ethan authority over your financial decisions?" "No, never." She showed me the paper. It was my signature, or something very close to it. A sophisticated forgery. He could use this to sell your house without your consent, transfer your money. Claire's phone rang, interrupting her. It was her assistant from the law firm. She stepped away to answer, and I continued to examine the documents. That's when I found, hidden among the papers, a newspaper clipping. The story, dated 2 weeks earlier, recounted the suspicious death of an elderly woman in Phoenix. The police were investigating the son, who had recently sold his mother's house and transferred a large sum of money to his accounts. The woman was found dead in her new apartment, apparently from a gas leak. My blood ran cold. Was it a coincidence? I slipped the clipping into my purse, trying not to let panic take over. Claire returned, and we continued searching the apartment. In the bathroom, we found several medication bottles. Some were prescription anti-anxiety pills. Others I didn't recognize. I took photos of the labels with my phone to research later. "I think we've seen enough," Claire said, looking at her watch. Ethan could be back any minute. Before leaving, I decided to take one last look at the bedroom. That's when I noticed something strange in the closet, a toolbox partially visible behind the clothes. I opened it and found basic tools, screwdrivers, pliers, and a small, unlabeled glass vial containing a clear liquid. Next to it, a stack of papers. They were instructions for handling a type of sedative, detailing dosages and effects. "Claire," I called, my voice trembling. She came quickly and looked at the vial. "Don't touch that," she said, taking a tissue to wrap the vial. "We're taking this to be analyzed." We heard the sound of a key in the front door. Claire and I looked at each other, frozen. "Ethan should be at the gym," I whispered. Apparently, he changed his plans. Quickly, Claire put the vial in her purse. We had no way out without passing through the living room. I looked around, desperate, and pointed to the bedroom window. It led to the fire escape. "Let's go," I whispered, already opening the window. We scrambled silently down the fire escape, trying not to make noise. Ethan's apartment was on the 3rd floor, and when we reached the ground floor, we heard the bedroom window slam shut. Ethan had discovered our escape. "Run!" Claire said, and we ran to the car. I jumped in quickly as she started the engine. In the rearview mirror, I saw Ethan burst out of the building, looking around frantically. He spotted us and started running in our direction. "Mom!" he yelled. "Wait, I can explain." Claire sped off, leaving him behind. "Where are we going?" I asked, my heart pounding. To a friend's lab. We need to know what's in this vial. After that, straight to the police precinct. On the way, I called Brenda, asking her to check my house. I was worried Ethan might go there. She agreed and said she'd call as soon as she arrived. At the lab, Claire's friend, a retired forensic chemist named Victor, greeted us with concern. "I need you to analyze this as quickly as possible," Claire explained, handing him the vial. "We suspect it's some kind of sedative, or worse." Victor nodded and took the vial. While we waited, I showed Claire the photos I took of the medications. "This one here," she pointed, "is a strong psychiatric drug for personality disorders, hallucinations." "Ethan never mentioned psychiatric problems," I replied, stunned. "The prescription date is from only 3 months ago, and from the looks of it, he's not taking it regularly. Several pills are still in the bottles." My cell phone rang. It was Brenda. "Sarah, I'm at your house. Everything is fine, but there's something strange in your bedroom. Can you come over?" Claire and I exchanged glances. "We're on our way, Brenda. Don't touch anything and don't let anyone in." Victor returned with the preliminary results. "It's a mix of drugs," he explained, "mainly barbiturates and something that looks like a synthetic opioid. In small doses, it would cause drowsiness, confusion. In larger doses, it would be fatal. And the worst part, it would be difficult to detect in a routine autopsy." We thanked Victor and promised to return later for a formal report. On the way to my house, Claire was visibly tense. "Sarah, your son might be planning to kill you." The words hit me like stones. "Why? For the insurance money? For the house?" "We don't know the details, but the combination of the fake power of attorney, the newspaper clipping about that other death, the drugs. It's a very clear pattern." Tears streamed down my face. "How did we get to this point? What happened to my son?" Claire squeezed my hand briefly. "I don't know, Sarah, but right now, we need to ensure your safety." We arrived at my house, where Brenda was waiting for us, visibly nervous. She led us to my bedroom. "I was looking for your phone charger, and I looked under the bed," she explained. "That's when I saw this." I knelt and looked where she was pointing. Under the bed was a small electronic device connected to a thin tube that ran to the wall. Following the tube, we discovered it led to the gas heater's valve in the bedroom. "It's a timer," Claire said, examining the device, "programmed to open the gas valve at 3 in the morning." I remembered the newspaper clipping. "The woman found dead from a gas leak." "How long has this been here?" I asked, fighting back panic. "I'm not sure," I replied, "but Ethan was here last night, as we saw on the cameras." Brenda covered her mouth with her hands, horrified. "Do you think that he wanted to?" "I think we need to call the police now," Claire said, already on her phone, "and you can't stay here tonight." While she was calling the police, my cell phone rang. It was Ethan. I showed the phone screen to Claire, who nodded, signaling for me to answer. She gestured for me to put it on speaker. "Ethan?" I answered, trying to control my voice. "Mom?" he said, sounding strangely calm. "What were you doing in my apartment?" I was worried about you, honey." "Worried? Why?" "I'm perfectly fine. You lost your job 4 months ago and didn't tell me. You've been breaking into my house at night. That doesn't seem fine to me, Ethan." There was a pause. "Who told you I lost my job?" "Michael told me everything. About the embezzled money, the agreement for you to leave quietly." Another pause, longer this time. "You shouldn't have gotten involved in this, Mom. Everything was under control. I had a plan." "What plan, Ethan? What's happening to you?" "I can't talk about this over the phone. I need to see you, in person." Claire shook her head vigorously. "I'm with Claire right now," I replied. "We can meet at her office." "No." His voice hardened. "Just the two of us. It's a family matter. Come to my apartment now." "Ethan, I'm scared. We found things in your apartment, and here in my house. Things that suggest you might be planning to hurt me." A short, almost dismissive laugh. "Hurt you? You're my mother. I'm trying to protect you. The world out there is dangerous, full of people who want to take advantage of women who live alone. Like that lady in the newspaper, the one who died from a gas leak, whose son sold her house and took the money. Total silence on the other end. It was you, wasn't it? I continued, my voice trembling. You have something to do with her death. I don't know what you're talking about. The device in my bedroom, Ethan, to open the gas valve while I was sleeping. You're the one who installed it. You don't understand anything, he retorted, his voice now filled with rage. It's all connected. They're all out there, waiting, watching, wanting what's ours, what's mine by right. Who is they, Ethan? It doesn't matter. What matters is that soon, this will all be over. We'll be safe. You need help, honey. We found your medication. Why didn't you tell me you were in psychiatric treatment? Those drugs make me slow, confused. I can't see the truth when I take them. The patterns, the connections. Everything gets fuzzy. I looked at Claire, who nodded encouragingly. The police are on their way, she whispered. Ethan, please, let's meet with your doctor. Together. We can solve this. There's no time, he replied, a note of urgency in his voice. There, getting closer. I need to act today, tonight. What are you going to do, Ethan? I'm going to do what's necessary. You'll understand later, Mom. You'll thank me for it. The call ended abruptly. Claire, Brenda, and I looked at each other, stunned. He's clearly in a psychotic crisis, Claire said. He needs to be committed immediately. The intercom buzzed. It was the police. 2 officers came in and examined the device in the bedroom. They took our statements, photographed everything, and removed the apparatus. We're going to issue an arrest warrant for your son, ma'am, one of the officers informed me. Based on this and your testimony, there's sufficient evidence of attempted murder. He needs psychiatric help, I insisted. He's sick. That will be determined by a medical evaluation after his arrest. For now, we strongly advise you not to stay in this house. I agreed and thanked them. After the officers left, Claire suggested I stay at her house for a few days. Brenda offered to grab some clothes and essentials for me. While I waited in Claire's car, I received a text from Ethan. It doesn't matter where you hide, Mom. I'm going to find you. I'm going to save you from them. I showed the message to Claire when she returned. I've already forwarded it to the detective, she said, starting the car. They're going to intensify the search. Sarah, your son is a real danger right now. Not just to you, but possibly to others. On the way to Claire's house, I tried to process everything that had happened. How does a mother not notice her son is suffering to the point of developing delusions? How did I miss the signs? Don't blame yourself, Claire said, as if reading my mind. Psychiatric disorders can develop silently, especially in adults. Ethan was clearly good at hiding the symptoms until he couldn't anymore. But why now? What triggered it? Maybe the financial stress after losing his job. Maybe the divorce. Sometimes there isn't a single, identifiable trigger. We arrived at Claire's house, a cozy home in a gated community in Oak Brook. Her husband, Paul, greeted us with tea and a sympathetic hug. Brenda arrived shortly after with my things. Do you think he'll come here? I asked, feeling guilty for involving more people in this situation. It's unlikely, replied Paul, who worked as a security consultant. He doesn't know where Claire lives, right? Not that I know of, I replied. We never visited her together. To be safe, I've already alerted the community security, Claire said. They have his description and photo. Later, we heard from the detective. The police had gone to Ethan's apartment, but he wasn't there. Neighbors reported seeing him leave in a hurry with a backpack. His car was also gone from the garage. We've issued an alert, the detective reported over the phone. All patrols are on the lookout. If he tries to make contact, let us know immediately. I spent a restless night, waking up at every small noise. In the morning, Claire brought me the newspaper. On the front page was Ethan's photo with the headline, "Man wanted for attempted murder of his own mother." I cried as I read the story, which detailed the recent events and mentioned the possible connection to another similar case. This is a nightmare, I murmured. Claire's phone rang. It was the detective again. We found his car abandoned near the highway, he reported. There are signs he may have hitched a ride or used public transport. We've expanded the search to neighboring cities. The hours dragged on. Claire had to go to her office, but Paul stayed with me, working remotely. His calm presence comforted me, although I could barely concentrate on anything. My thoughts were constantly on Ethan. Where was he? What was he planning? How had things gotten to this point? In the late afternoon, Brenda came to visit, bringing some clothes I had forgotten and an old photo album she thought might comfort me. Flipping through it, I saw Ethan in different phases. A smiling baby, a focused child building sand castles, a proud teenager at his graduation. Look at him. I showed Brenda a photo of Ethan at 16, smiling next to his father. How did that boy turn into this? The human mind is a mystery, Sarah, Brenda replied, holding my hand. Maybe he was already struggling for a long time and was just hiding it from all of us. My cell phone rang, displaying an unknown number. I looked at Paul, who nodded and moved closer to listen. I answered and put it on speaker. Hello, Sarah Randall? A male voice I didn't recognize. This is Dr. Philip Sanchez, from St. Teresa's Psychiatric Hospital. My heart sped up. Yes, this is she. I'm calling about your son, Ethan Randall. He checked himself into our emergency unit about 2 hours ago. He's there? I asked, incredulous. Is he okay? Physically, yes. Mentally, he's in crisis. He stated that he's been having psychotic episodes for some months and stopped taking his prescribed medication. He asked to be admitted because, in his words, he's losing control and is afraid he's going to hurt someone. I felt a mixture of relief and profound sadness. Paul squeezed my shoulder in support. Did he mention anything about me? I asked, hesitant. Yes, in fact. He expressed great concern for your safety, but in a confused and paranoid way. He mentioned people watching and conspiracies. These are classic symptoms of the condition we're observing. Did he mention trying to hurt me? A brief pause. Mrs. Randall, I am aware of the police report. Ethan confessed to installing a device in your house and planning actions that I prefer not to detail over the phone. We are in contact with the authorities. He will remain under our supervision and custody while we evaluate his mental state. Can I see him? I asked, my voice thick with emotion. We don't recommend visits at this initial stage. He is quite agitated, and we need to stabilize him first. Perhaps in a few days. I would like you to come to the hospital tomorrow to talk in person about his history and plan his treatment. I agreed and wrote down the address and time suggested by the doctor. After hanging up, I collapsed in tears in Brenda's arms. Paul was already on the phone with Claire and the detective, informing them of the situation. He turned himself in, I murmured between sobs. There's still a part of him in there that knows he needs help. The next morning, Claire accompanied me to the hospital. Dr. Sanchez, a middle-aged man with gentle eyes, received us in his office. Ethan is suffering from a schizoaffective disorder, he explained. Based on what we've been able to assess so far, the symptoms likely began about a year ago, perhaps after his divorce, but intensified in the last few months. How did I not realize it? I lamented. We saw each other regularly. People with this disorder can appear perfectly normal for long periods. The delusions tend to be focused on specific areas, while the rest of their mental functioning remains relatively intact. And now, he will begin intensive treatment, proper medication, therapy. The road is long, but with adherence to treatment, many patients manage to control their symptoms well. And what about the criminal charges? The doctor sighed. That will depend on the judicial system. However, given his mental state and the fact that he turned himself in voluntarily, there's a good chance he'll be ordered into compulsory treatment rather than conventional prison. Leaving the hospital, I felt strangely lighter, despite the gravity of the situation. At least now Ethan was safe, posed no danger to himself or others, and would receive the help he needed. During the following weeks, I immersed myself in reading about schizophrenia and related disorders, determined to better understand what my son was facing. I participated in support groups for family members and spoke at length with Dr. Sanchez about how to help in Ethan's recovery. A month after his admission, I was finally authorized to visit him. I was nervous, not knowing what to expect. The Ethan who entered the visiting room looked thinner, with deep dark circles under his eyes, but his eyes were clearer than I had seen them in months. "Mom," he said softly, not daring to come closer. "Honey," I replied, opening my arms. He hesitated, but then he came forward and hugged me. I felt his body tremble with silent sobs. I remember everything, he whispered. What I planned to do. How could I? It wasn't you, I replied, stroking his hair as I did when he was little. It was the illness. We sat down, and Ethan spoke with difficulty about how the symptoms had begun. Small suspicions, then intrusive thoughts, until voices in his head convinced him there was a conspiracy to harm me. In his mind, distorted by the illness, the only way to protect me was to free me from this world. When I stopped taking the medication, everything got worse. Fast, he explained. I started to believe there were connections between random events. I read about that woman in the newspaper, and somehow my mind created a narrative where I needed to do the same thing. Why the calls? I asked. Why always ask if I was alone? In my delusions, I believed they could be with you, monitoring. If you said you were with someone, I needed to know who it was to check if it wasn't one of them. He rubbed his eyes. It makes no sense now, but at the time it seemed perfectly logical. That night, when I lied, I began. Hesitantly, you saved your life, he concluded. I had decided that would be the night. The device was installed. If you had said you were with Claire, I would have just monitored the situation by phone, verified that everything was following the plan. But when you said you were alone, and I got there to find you with Claire, it was like a short circuit in the delusion. For a brief moment, I realized something was fundamentally wrong with my perception of reality. We sat in silence for a few minutes, the weight of that revelation hanging between us. Mom, whatever the outcome of the trial, I want you to know I'm committed to the treatment. I don't want to be a threat to you or anyone. I know, honey, I replied, holding his hand. I know. In the following week, the prosecutor filed a petition requesting access to Ethan's financial records. Mr. Mario Leal, the criminal defense attorney Claire had recommended, had already anticipated this, including the documents I found in the defense materials, along with a supplemental report explaining how seemingly calculated actions can be part of a psychotic framework. The trial was approaching, and the tension was growing. The story had attracted media attention, with sensational headlines like "Son, plan to murder, mother for insurance, and accountant with delusions nearly kills his own mom." It was painful to see our family tragedy turned into public entertainment. Meanwhile, I resumed my routine. The return to normalcy, however superficial, helped me maintain my mental balance. Brenda continued to be my pillar of support, as did Claire and her family. One evening, I received an unexpected call. It was Jessica, Ethan's ex-wife. "Sarah?" I heard what happened. "I'm in shock." "Jessica?" I replied, surprised. "I haven't seen you since the divorce. Over a year ago. How are you?" "I'm okay, considering." "Sarah, I need to tell you something. Something that might help understand what happened to Ethan." We arranged to meet at a cafe the next day. Jessica arrived punctually, as elegant as I remembered, but with a tense expression that didn't match her normally serene face. "I've been blaming myself ever since I heard," she began after ordering a cappuccino. "I thought I was doing the right thing by cutting off contact completely after the divorce. But now, Jessica, what happened?" She took a deep breath. "Our marriage didn't end just because of incompatibility, as everyone thinks. It ended because I realized Ethan was changing, having strange behaviors, suspicious of things that made no sense." "What kind of behaviors?" "At first, it was small things. He started checking the locks repeatedly before bed. He began to believe that colleagues at work were conspiring against him. Then he started having episodes where he would stare blankly into space, muttering to himself. I felt a knot in my chest. "Why did you never tell me?" "He made me promise not to tell anyone. He said he was just stressed from work." When I suggested we get help, he became furious, accusing me of trying to control him like the others. "It was terrifying, Sarah. I didn't recognize the man I married. That's why you filed for divorce." She nodded, tears in her eyes. I tried to convince him to seek help, but he refused. The divorce was triggered by a terrible argument where he accused me of being part of a conspiracy. I was afraid, genuinely. "Do you think he was already sick back then?" "Now I'm sure of it. The signs were all there. I should have insisted more, maybe told you, but… She wiped away a tear. After I moved out, I received some disturbing messages from him. I blocked his number and asked mutual friends not to mention me to him. I just wanted distance. I understand, Jessica. You were protecting yourself. But if I had spoken up, maybe he would have gotten help sooner. Maybe none of this would have happened. I held her hand. We can't go back in time. The important thing is that he's being treated now. I'd like to visit him, Jessica said, hesitantly, if you think it would be good for him. Considering what Ethan was facing, I thought a visit from Jessica might be disruptive. I explained this to her, and she understood. Instead, she suggested writing a letter expressing her support, which I could deliver when I thought it was appropriate. He's still important to me, Sarah, despite everything. I went home reflecting on the conversation. Another piece of the puzzle was falling into place. Ethan's problems had started long before I imagined. I felt a pang of guilt for not noticing the changes, for not asking more incisive questions when he and Jessica separated. As a mother, I should have seen the signs. At the preliminary hearing, the judge heard testimony from the doctors and the detective's account of the evidence found. Ethan appeared, medicated, and visibly dejected, accompanied by Mr. Leal. Your Honor, the lawyer argued, the medical evidence is conclusive. Mr. Randall is suffering from a severe, undiagnosed psychiatric disorder at the time of the events. He did not have the capacity to understand the illicit nature of his actions or to conform his conduct to that understanding. The prosecutor counter-argued that, despite the illness, there was meticulous planning in Ethan's actions, suggesting some level of discernment. The judge ruled that Ethan would remain committed to the psychiatric hospital under judicial custody until the full trial. It wasn't the best possible outcome, but it wasn't the worst either. At least he would continue to receive proper treatment. We're going to get the insanity ruling, Mr. Leal assured me after the hearing. The medical expert reports are solid, and the fact that he turned himself in voluntarily counts for a lot. Ethan and I had a few minutes alone in the courtroom, under the supervision of an officer at a distance. I'm so sorry for all of this, Mom, he said, his voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry too, honey, for not realizing you were suffering. There was no way to know. I didn't even know what was happening to me. It was like someone else was taking control, little by little. We'll get through this together, I promised, one day at a time. He nodded, his eyes glistening. I keep thinking about what might have happened if you hadn't lied that night. If you had said you were alone when you were actually with Claire. The thought chilled my spine. If I had maintained the usual pattern and told the truth that I was with Claire, Ethan would have just monitored the situation by phone. He wouldn't have come to the house to check personally. We wouldn't have discovered the cameras, the drugs, the device in the bedroom. It was an instinct, I replied. Something told me I needed to break that cycle. Ethan was taken back to the hospital, and I returned to my house, now completely renovated. I had replaced all the gas systems with electric ones and installed new alarms. Brenda spent a lot of time with me, insisting I shouldn't be alone. It's not good for you, all this silence, she'd say. You'll just end up dwelling on things. She was right. When I was alone, I'd spend hours mentally replaying the last few years, looking for signs I should have noticed. Moments when Ethan seemed distant or strange, paranoid comments I dismissed as simple stress. Autumn arrived, bringing cold winds and dry leaves that piled up in the yard. 6 months had passed since Ethan's admission. The trial was finally set for early November. Ethan continued to progress in his treatment. His doctors were optimistic, reporting that he showed insight into his condition and actively participated in therapies. In our visits, we talked about light topics, books he was reading, TV shows, childhood memories. We avoided talking about the uncertain future or the events that brought us there. One afternoon, while organizing the study at home, I found an envelope I didn't recognize. Inside were Ethan's financial documents, bank statements, loan contracts, and a life insurance policy in my name that I knew nothing about. It was dated just 2 weeks before his admission. I took the papers to Claire to analyze. After examining them carefully, she explained, he took on enormous debts in recent months, loans from different banks, maxed out credit cards, and used the money to buy this life insurance policy for you, with him as the beneficiary. How much? I asked, feeling a chill. $500,000. The amount made me dizzy. It was an absurd sum. Why would he do that? From what we can piece together, after embezzling money at work and getting caught, Ethan fell into financial desperation. Simultaneously, his mental condition was deteriorating. In the distorted logic of his illness, he saw a solution: to take out a huge insurance policy on me and then kill me to collect the money, I completed. The cruel reality finally revealing itself completely. The most disturbing part is that the policy has a specific clause that covers accidental death, including a gas leak. I felt nauseous. The scope of the plan by Ethan, my own son, was more calculated than I had imagined. What does this mean for the case? I asked, thinking of the legal implications. It complicates things a bit. It shows premeditation, financial planning. The prosecutor will certainly use this to argue that, despite the mental illness, there was enough rationality in Ethan's actions to characterize culpability. But he was sick. He wasn't thinking clearly. I know, Sarah, and we'll make sure Mr. Leal has these documents. He needs to prepare a solid counter-argument. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay staring at the ceiling, thinking about how my son had meticulously planned my death, the same person I held in my arms, to whom I sang lullabies, whose scraped knees I cured with kisses and bandages. The next morning, I took the documents to Mr. Leal, who looked visibly concerned. This changes our strategy, he admitted. We'll have to emphasize the medical component even more. Show that even seemingly rational actions can be the product of psychotic thinking when the illness involves systematic delusions. Does the prosecutor know about this yet? Not yet, but we'll have to disclose it during discovery. We can't risk him finding it on his own and accusing us of hiding evidence. I visited Ethan that afternoon, the documents weighing heavily in my purse, literally and figuratively. I decided not to mention them yet, following the lawyer's advice. Ethan seemed particularly lucid that day. The doctors say I'm responding well to the treatment, he commented, with a small smile. Dr. Sanchez mentioned that, with time, I'll be able to have a relatively normal life, as long as I stick to the treatment rigorously. That's wonderful, honey. I'm trying to imagine what it will be like afterward, if there is an afterward. He looked at his hands. I know a lot of bridges were burned. My job, my friends, your trust. One thing at a time, I replied, trying to sound encouraging despite the turmoil in my mind. First, let's focus on your recovery and the trial. I've been thinking a lot about those calls, he said suddenly, why I called every night at the exact same time. And it was the time when the voices got louder. Something about the twilight, the transition from day to night, seemed to amplify my symptoms, and asking if you were alone. It was like a ritual that calmed me temporarily. If you said you were alone, the voices told me there was still time, that I could wait a little longer. If you were with someone, I needed to check who was with you, if it was one of them. Hearing him describe the mechanics of his illness so clearly was both disturbing and enlightening. I could now better understand the mental prison my son had been in. That night, when I lied, I began hesitantly. You saved your life, he concluded. I had decided that would be the night. The device was installed. If you had said you were with Claire, I would have just monitored the situation by phone, verified that everything was following the plan. But when you said you were alone, and I got there to find you with Claire, it was like a short circuit in the delusion. For a brief moment, I realized something was fundamentally wrong with my perception of reality. We sat in silence for a few minutes, the weight of that revelation hanging between us. Mom, whatever the outcome of the trial, I want you to know I'm committed to the treatment. I don't want to be a threat to you or anyone. I know, honey, I replied, holding his hand. I know. In the following week, the prosecutor filed a petition requesting access to Ethan's financial records. Mr. Leal had already anticipated this, including the documents I found in the defense materials, along with a supplemental expert report explaining how seemingly calculated actions can be part of a psychotic framework. The trial was approaching, and the tension was growing. The story had attracted local media attention, with sensational headlines. It was painful to see our family tragedy turned into public entertainment. Meanwhile, I resumed my work routine. The return to normalcy, however superficial, helped me maintain my mental balance. Brenda continued to be my pillar of support, as did Claire and her family. One evening, I received an unexpected call. It was Michael, Ethan's former boss. "Sarah, I heard the trial is coming up. There's something you need to know." I met Michael in his downtown office the next morning. He seemed nervous, constantly fiddling with a pen as he spoke. "I didn't tell you everything before," he confessed, about Ethan's departure from the company. "What didn't you tell me?" The embezzlement wasn't as simple as I explained. Ethan wasn't just transferring funds to his accounts. He was obsessively documenting supposed irregularities in our accounting procedures. What kind of irregularities? None. They were fabrications of his mind. He created an elaborate system of files connecting normal transactions to a supposed money laundering network. He started accusing directors of being involved with criminal organizations. "And why didn't you mention this before?" Michael sighed. Shame, perhaps, for not realizing how sick he was. For treating him like a common criminal when clearly something was very wrong. And also, fear of what that negative publicity could do to the company. "Do you have those documents he created?" "Some. Most were destroyed when he left. But I kept some as a legal precaution." He handed me a folder. "I thought it might help his defense. It clearly shows a pattern of delusional thinking, months before the incidents with you." I thanked Michael and took the documents straight to Mr. Leal. He examined them with growing interest. "This is gold, Sarah," he finally said. "Unequivocal proof that Ethan's delusional behavior at work preceded his actions against you by months. It establishes a clear pattern of mental deterioration over time, consistent with untreated schizophrenia. In the days leading up to the trial, I lived in a state of constant anxiety. The case would be decided by a judge, without a jury, as determined in preliminary hearings due to the psychiatric nature of the accusations. On the morning of the trial, the courtroom was packed. Reporters, onlookers, law students. I sat in the front row, with Claire by my side, as Ethan was led in by the officers. He looked different, more present, his gaze clearer, but visibly nervous. He wore a borrowed suit that looked large on his frame, thinned by stress and medication. The trial lasted 3 days. Detailed medical testimony, statements from former colleagues, forensic evidence about the device in my bedroom and the financial documents. Michael testified about Ethan's erratic behavior at the company, presenting the delusional files he had preserved. In his own statement, Ethan spoke with surprising clarity about his experience with the illness. "It was like living in 2 worlds simultaneously," he explained to the court. "One world where I still functioned, worked, talked normally, and another world, just as real to me at the time, where there were conspiracies, threats, and where I needed to protect my mother from dangers only I could see." On the final day, the prosecutor and Mr. Leal presented their closing arguments. "This case involves meticulous planning, deliberate actions, and clear financial motives," the prosecutor argued. "Although the defendant certainly suffers from a mental disorder, there is sufficient evidence that he understood the criminal nature of his acts." Mr. Leal refuted this. "The medical evidence is unequivocal. At the time of the events, Ethan Randall was afflicted by a severe psychotic disorder that completely impaired his ability to discern right from wrong. The apparent planning was, in reality, a manifestation of structured delusional thinking, characteristic of his condition. We are not talking about a person who chose evil, but about a mind imprisoned by illness." The judge announced he would deliver the verdict the following afternoon. It was the longest night of my life. The next day, the courtroom was even more crowded. Ethan looked like he had aged years overnight, the fear evident in every line on his face. When the judge entered, everyone rose in tense silence. "This court finds the defendant, Ethan Randall, not guilty by reason of insanity at the time of the crime," the judge announced. "The medical evidence is conclusive regarding his psychiatric condition and its impact on his capacity for discernment." I felt tears of relief stream down my face. Ethan closed his eyes, his shoulders visibly relaxing. However, the judge continued, "Given the serious nature of the actions and the potential danger to society should treatment be interrupted, I am ordering the defendant to be committed to a secure psychiatric hospital for a minimum period of 3 years, subject to periodic reevaluations. It was the best possible outcome under the circumstances. Ethan wouldn't go to prison, but would instead receive continuous treatment in a safe environment for both himself and others. When the session was adjourned, I was able to hug my son briefly before he was taken away. "Thank you, Mom," he whispered, "for not giving up on me." "I will never give up on you," I promised. 2 years have passed since that day. Ethan is still in the hospital, but now in a semi-open regime, which allows for extended visits and even short, supervised outings. His progress has been remarkable. The right medication and continuous therapy have allowed him to reclaim much of his original personality. In one of our recent conversations, I asked him something that still intrigued me. "Honey, those nightly calls. Why did you always hang up when I said I was alone? Why didn't you keep talking to me?" He thought for a moment. "The voices told me that if I stayed on the line too long, they could trace the call. In my delusional mind, checking on you and hanging up quickly was a form of protection. And if I said I wasn't alone, then I needed to verify who was with you. I needed to be sure it wasn't one of them." The distorted logic of the illness finally made a strange kind of sense to me, like a final piece of the puzzle clicking into place. Today, sitting on the porch of my renovated house, reflecting on everything we've been through, I feel a strange mix of pain and gratitude. Pain for the suffering the illness caused my son, for the nights of terror I lived through, for the relationship that will need to be rebuilt slowly, with fragile trust, gratitude for that moment of intuition that made me break the pattern, for lying when I said I was alone, even though Claire was with me. That simple lie triggered the events that saved my life, and possibly Ethan's as well, pulling him out of a psychotic spiral that could have ended even more tragically. My phone rings. It's Ethan, calling from the hospital. No longer at 9:15 at night, but at various times of the day, as his treatment routine allows. No longer asking if I'm alone, but sharing small bits of progress, modest plans for the future, happy memories that are slowly resurfacing as the fog of the illness lifts. "Hello, honey," I answer, feeling grateful for the chance to hear his voice one more time. Life is made of patterns that give us comfort and security, but sometimes breaking a pattern can be the only thing that saves us. Now, if you like this story, click subscribe and tell me in the comments which part left your jaw on the floor. Oh, and don't forget to become a member to get access to exclusive videos that I don't upload here. I'll be waiting for you there.